My son died, and my daughter-in-law took $55K from him, then kicked me out like trash. I'm a woman of 58 years old, and 3 weeks after my son's funeral, I was standing on his front porch with my suitcase, watching my daughter-in-law lock the door and tell me I was not part of the plan. It was a small plan. Apparently, her plan to start a new life without the weight of other people's grief, as she called it. There were still flowers wilting in vases around the living room. My son's jacket was hanging on the coat hook by the stairs. His toothbrush was by the sink. I had come with a tray of soup and a box of photos because I thought that's what families did after a loss. She handed me a trash bag with the sweater I'd left on the couch and a framed photo I kept on the nightstand in the guest room, the one where my son was 6 and missing his front teeth. "Take your things," she said. "I need space." The humiliation was hot and bright. The neighbor from across the street, Linda, came out to get her mail and froze when she saw me standing there. I tried to smile and failed. The suitcase felt heavier than it had any right to be. I was still moving slower than normal, as if the world had picked up a new gravity since we laid my boy in the ground. I told my daughter-in-law I'd come back another day to pick up the rest of my things from the guest room. She said there was nothing left and closed the door. The lock clicked. That sound had the finality of earth hitting a coffin lid. My son's name was Daniel. He'd been married to Ashley for 5 years. He was the kind of man who kept receipts in labeled envelopes, who fixed wobbly chairs without being asked, who called me every Sunday at exactly 5. He worked in logistics, nothing glamorous, but he loved the neatness of it. Boxes, routes, schedules that made sense. In March, a driver ran a red light and hit his car on the driver's side. He lasted long enough for me to hold his hand in the hospital and tell him the things you're supposed to say, and 1,000 other things that no one prepares you to say. I asked the nurse if I could cut a lock of his hair. She said yes. It sits in a small envelope inside my dresser now. I can't open it. I just touched the envelope. After the funeral, Ashley moved through the house like a project manager. She made lists. She stacked sympathy cards in precise piles and left them tied with twine like props. She thanked everyone with the same tone, measured, dry. I thought perhaps this was shock. The second week, she told me I could take a break from staying in the guest room. The third week, she told me to pack, and then, on the porch, closed her door on me like I was a salesperson. "This is my house," she said. "I need boundaries." I drove home to my little apartment, 1 bedroom above a bakery that starts smelling like cinnamon at 4 a.m., and I sat on the edge of my bed with my jacket still on. I called Daniel's phone because I hadn't canceled it yet. The voicemail picked up. "Hey, it's Dan. Leave it." I didn't. I just listened to the space between the words, the little exhale at the end like he was about to laugh. The next morning, something strange happened. I woke to the buzzing of Daniel's old iPad on my nightstand. He had left it at my place months ago when he was setting up a playlist for me, and we never got around to wiping it. I kept using it to read recipes and watch silly videos at night. His email and messages were still logged in, which felt like a small, guilty window into a life I shouldn't open. Since he died, I hadn't touched the Messages app. That morning, a notification flashed and then another. They weren't messages. They were banking alerts. I didn't know his bank still pinged the iPad. I didn't know alerts carried across devices. The screen showed, transfer completed, $55,000. Memo, household, urgent. Another alert, large withdrawal notice acknowledged. I stared and stared. The timestamp was 2 days after the funeral. The account it moved to had a name I recognized, Ashley R., her personal checking, the one she used before they merged finances. The memo, household urgent, felt like a joke. I put the iPad down, picked it up again, checked the timestamp again. I told myself I had no right to any of this. I told myself grief makes a person nosy, but $55,000 is not a detail you trip over and leave on the floor. I made tea. I didn't drink, and sat at my small table with the blue checkered cloth and made myself breathe in counts of 4, because otherwise the room tilted. I remembered the way Daniel set money aside. He was careful with savings, careful in that old-fashioned way that comes from watching a single mother worry over bills. When he got his first steady job at 24, he set up automatic transfers to a rainy day account. When he married Ashley, he told me he'd keep a cushion, just in case life throws a truck at me. He laughed. Maybe he regretted that joke later. The cushion wasn't for me. It was for his future kids, for a roof leak, for peace. I went to see Ashley because I couldn't stand not knowing. When she opened the door, her eyes ran straight over me like I was a line on a form. I didn't even sit down. I told her I accidentally saw a transfer on Daniel's iPad. I told her I wasn't spying and that I was sorry, but it had shocked me. She cocked her head and said she had moved some money to handle immediate costs. I asked what costs added up to $55,000. Her face closed. "Are you really questioning me about money right now?" she said. He was my husband. I didn't list funerals I'd paid for before. The way the community covers things. The way the final bill we split had already been paid by both sides. How the cemetery plot had been purchased years ago when my father died, leaving an extra beside him. I didn't say many funerals fit in a fraction of that amount. She repeated, "Are you questioning me?" Like she'd practiced it in the mirror. I said I was trying to understand because it was his savings, and because I'd like to know what he wanted done with them. She leaned against the counter and told me I was making my grief performative. She said she could give me a small stipend if I needed help with rent. The way she said stipend made me feel like a stray cat. I left with my throat tight and my heart banging like it wanted out. Linda saw me again and asked if I was okay. I lied. That night I opened a box of Daniel's things I hadn't had the strength to go through yet. Inside was a small notebook with a blue cover, his handwriting on the first page, neat from years of tidy lists. The title, House 2024. Inside, notes about repairs, quotes from contractors, even silly things like remember filter sizes. On the third page, a line that froze me. Transfer $55K to Mom if anything happens. Talk to Ashley first. Be kind. It wasn't a contract. It wasn't a will. It was a note to himself, a breadcrumb. I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Ashley's face when she said stipend. I kept seeing that little sentence in Daniel's hand. I wrote it on a scrap of paper and put the notebook back in its box. The next day, I called Daniel's closest friend, Jason. He and Daniel had been friends since they were 11 and got in trouble for letting frogs go in the schoolyard. Jason cried on the phone when I told him what was going on, then went quiet in that heavy way men go quiet when they're trying not to be cruel. He said Daniel had mentioned the cushion months ago. He said Daniel had told him he wanted to help me move to a better place closer to my sister. In case the stairs get mean, he'd joked. Jason didn't know about the exact amount, but he remembered the number 50. He also remembered Daniel worrying that Ashley would burn through anything liquid because she treated money like it turned into ash if you didn't spend it on something shiny. It was like someone opened a window. A sharp, cold draft of anger came in with the air. My boy had thought of me. He left a note for himself to make sure I was okay. And 2 days after putting flowers on his grave, the person who loved him, or said she did, moved the money out like clearing a shelf. I tried to talk to Ashley again, because I wanted to give her the chance to be the person Daniel married. I printed the page from the notebook to bring with me because I didn't want to hand her the original. When she opened the door and saw the paper, her mouth tightened. I told her calmly what Jason had said. I told her about the note. I said I didn't want to fight. I said I wanted to respect Daniel's wishes and asked her to tell me what she had used the money for. She said I was harassing her and that she would call the police if I came again without being invited. She repeated that, "This is my house." She told me I had been taking over everything since the funeral, that I had camped in the guest room, that I had made the house heavy. I swallowed because some of that might be true. Grief is heavy. Mothers are heavy when they lose a child. But I hadn't taken anything. I had washed dishes and put casseroles in the freezer and lined up thank you cards for her to sign. I had folded the sweater he left on the back of a chair the day before the accident. I stepped back, said I wouldn't bother her again, and walked to the sidewalk. As I passed the driveway, I saw a new car. Sleek. The kind of shine that hurts when you haven't slept. The temporary plate was taped to the window. Linda came down her front steps and whispered that Ashley had driven it home the night before with a big red bow attached. The dealership had taken a photo of her smiling. The salesman had clapped. "Struck me as fast after a funeral," Linda said with that soft tone polite people use when they're trying not to judge. I stared at the bow, now wilted and stuffed in the recycling bin. In the quiet of my apartment, the cinnamon smell turned sour. I opened the window. The bakery fans hummed below. My hands shook as I called Jason back. He didn't pick up. I left a message saying I felt like I was losing my mind. I said I needed something concrete, because every time I looked at Ashley, I started to doubt my own eyes. Grief does that. It lays a fog over everything. It makes you wonder if you misheard, missaw, misunderstood. I needed a line on the road. The line arrived that evening. Not a bank record, not a confession, a photo. Linda had taken it at the funeral reception without meaning anything by it. She had sent it to me that night, and I hadn't looked because I couldn't yet look at my boy's face in any photo from that day. In the foreground, Ashley hugging a family friend, chin lifted, eyes dry. In the background, 2 women from Daniel's office, head to head, one holding a phone, a screen lit up between them. You could read the top line of the message they were gossiping over if you pinched the image open far enough. "Congrats on the new ride. Can't believe you did it this week. You are bold." The timestamp glowed. The week was that week my son died. 2 days later, $55,000 left his account to hers. 3 days later, she bought a car with a bow. 4 days later, she handed me a trash bag and closed the door. And I, stupid with love and pain, was on the porch apologizing for bothering her. I slept for perhaps an hour, waking to the iPad buzzing like a stubborn fly. New alerts. Purchases in quick succession. Boutique furniture store, spa, a deposit on event services. I imagined a party light reflected in a showroom window, her face bright in the glass. I pressed the side button until the screen went black because I couldn't watch anymore. The device sat there on my nightstand like a heartbeat trapped under glass. In the morning, I folded the printed page from Daniel's notebook and put it in my wallet. I wrote a simple letter to Ashley. "I won't come to the house again. I won't call. I will not discuss your choices with others. But please stop telling me I am making a scene when I ask where my son's savings went. You know what he wanted. I know too. That's enough shame for 2 people to carry. I didn't send it. I put it in the same drawer as the hair envelope." The world kept moving. People returned casserole dishes. Flowers emptied themselves into brown water. The bakery opened at 4 and the smell of cinnamon came back, patient as the tide. I went outside and watched the delivery guy haul sacks of flour across the alley. When he saw my face, he nodded the way strangers do when they recognize something raw in you. That afternoon, Jenny, a friend of Ashley's I barely knew, came to my door. She spoke fast, like she had to spit words out before courage faded. She said Ashley had told their group chat that I was trying to claim money, and that I had slept in the house like a squatter, and that I had threatened to take things. Jenny said she didn't believe it and that she was sorry. She said she had seen the bow on the car and felt sick. She put a hand on mine and squeezed hard. Then she left, quick as a bird. When the door closed, I leaned against it and laughed once, a small, broken sound. Squatter, stipend, boundaries, words that make a person disappear, are always very clean. They shave off texture. They turn mothers into problems. They turn grief into a mess someone else has to sweep. That night, I wrote down everything I knew. Dates, times, numbers, that note in Daniel's hand. Not to take anyone to court, not to build a case, just to fix the facts in place so Ashley couldn't rotate the room on me. I fell asleep with the notebook open on my chest and woke to the imprint of spiral wire on my cheek. I don't know what happens next. I know what my son wanted. I know what Ashley did. I know a front door can feel like a verdict. I know there are limits to what a heart can absorb, and I can feel myself nearing them. The day after Jenny came by, I took a bus to the cemetery with a thermos of tea and sat on the bench near Daniel's stone. It was too new, the letters too sharp, the dates still unfinished in my mind. I told him everything. I kept my voice low despite the wind, because talking to a stone makes you feel exposed, like a child telling a secret to a big ear. I didn't ask him what to do. I just said the facts out loud so I could hear them outside my own head. A groundskeeper waved from a distance and left me alone. On my way home, Jason called back. His voice was rough. He said he'd dug through their old group chat and found a voice note Daniel sent him 6 months ago. He forwarded it. I sat on the edge of my bed and listened to my son's voice, alive, a little tired. He said he was trying to convince Ashley to let him keep a separate emergency fund. He said she didn't like it, that she called it hoarding. He said, "If anything ever happens to me, I want Mom to have a cushion. She did too many years of making $1 into 2. I want her to breathe." He laughed at the end, that short huff, and said, "I should probably put that in a real will. I will. I will." Then the note ended, and all the air in the room went quiet. It wasn't a legal document. It wouldn't make a judge pound a gavel in my favor if I ever wanted one. It was my son talking to a friend about the kind of man he was and the kind of son he wanted to be. It was enough to anchor me to a simple course. No scenes, no pleading, no standing on porches with printouts. Just one last attempt at plain truth, delivered to the person who keeps twisting it. I wrote Ashley a letter I did send. I kept it to 1 page. I told her I wouldn't come to the house again. I told her I would not speak to her friends or post online or shout on doorsteps. I wrote, "Daniel left notes. He told people what he hoped for. You know this. I will not chase you. I will not argue. But I won't let you rewrite me into a beggar at your door. Keep the money if you can keep the story straight in your own head. I hope you can live with it. I can't live inside it." I mailed it and, practical as always, I sent a photo of it to my email, so I couldn't be told later I had said something else. The next days were very ordinary. I watered the plant on my windowsill. I walked to the post office to send thank you cards I should have sent weeks ago. I bought a lamp because the old one near the armchair buzzed, and I couldn't stand the sound anymore. Ordinary days feel like a betrayal when you're grieving, like you're letting the person slip. I forced myself to eat eggs for breakfast and call my sister in the evenings to talk about nothing. Ashley didn't respond to my letter with words. She responded with a picture, which is its own kind of word. A photo popped up in the old iPad's cloud, because she still used the shared album Daniel had made when they got married, the one they dumped random life moments into, of a set dining table covered in pale pink plates and gold flatware, menus at each place with names printed in looping script. At the top, New Beginnings Dinner. The date was 12 days after the funeral. I pinched the image open with my fingers. There were 10 place cards. Mine was not among them. In the corner of the frame, you could see the edge of the new car's key fob, a little metal tag shaped like a bow. There was something clarifying about that picture. I didn't feel rage. I felt the cool that comes after a fever breaks. People show you who they are. You can squint and try to see another shape, but the outline is the outline. A day later, I got a call from someone I didn't expect. Ashley's father, George. We had never been close. He was polite in a corporate way, always on the phone, always stepping out to take this. He asked if he could stop by. He arrived with his hands empty, which I appreciated. No flowers, no solutions in a bag. He sat at my small table and exhaled like he had been holding it since March. He said he didn't know about the transfer, that Ashley had told him I was making demands. He said he had asked her to slow down and she had told him he was unsupportive. He rubbed his forehead and said, "I didn't raise her to be this way." Parents say that when they feel the edge of their own shape, when they realize their children have corners, they didn't sand. I told him I wasn't asking for him to fix anything. I told him I just wanted someone to say out loud that what happened was wrong. He did. Then he said, "I'll talk to her." I nodded. We both knew the limit of that sentence. That evening, a message came from an unknown number. It was short. "You've poisoned my parents against me. This is harassment. Please stop contacting my family." I hadn't contacted anyone. I had answered a knock. I didn't reply. I turned off the iPad's notifications. The sudden silence felt like stepping out of a room where a TV had been on too loud. 2 small things changed after that. First, Linda from across the street left a note in my mailbox saying if I wanted the rest of my things from Daniel's house, she'd be happy to meet me there when Ashley wasn't home. "I hate how she treated you," she wrote in her tiny, neat script. "You don't deserve to be made to feel like debris." The word hit me in the place where that porch door had hit. Debris. That's exactly how it felt. The way the bag with my sweater crinkled in my hand. The way the framed photo of Daniel at 6 had clacked against the trash bag plastic. Second, Jason sent me screenshots of a conversation he'd had with Daniel 3 weeks before the accident. In it, Daniel told him Ashley had found his blue book and had given him a speech about trust and transparency. He had written, "She thinks separate money means secrets. I think it means safety." We argued. I gave in on the amount but not on the idea. I said a final number, 55. If anything happens, that's for Mom. Reading that line felt like having a blanket thrown over my shoulders in a cold room. Not warmth, exactly. Protection from further chill. I didn't go to the house with Linda. The thought of standing in those rooms again, of touching the doorknob and feeling the click in my palm, made my breath hitch. I asked if she could pick up the box with my books from the guest room and the small sewing kit I kept in the hall closet. She did. She slipped the box into my hands on her front walk like we were trading contraband. Inside, tucked between a battered copy of a mystery novel and a jar of buttons, was the blue notebook. Not the printed page, the real one. For a second, I thought Linda had grabbed the wrong thing. Then I saw a faint sticky note on the back cover, the kind that clings when it wants to be found. "If you don't want this here, maybe it belongs there." There was no signature. No flourish, just that quiet line. I sat on my couch and held the book to my chest like you'd hold a sleeping bird. I opened to the page with Daniel's handwriting, the line about transferring the money to Mom if anything happens. I traced the ink with my finger. I closed the book and put it in the drawer with the hair and the letter I didn't send and the one I did. That drawer had turned into a small private memorial of paper. Days passed. People expect drama to peak and conclude, like storms. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just spreads out into a season. Ashley didn't contact me again after the message about her parents. Jason stopped sending screenshots because I asked him to. Not because I didn't want them, but because I wanted to be able to put the phone down and not feel like I was standing by a window with the blinds half open. I took a part-time job at the bakery downstairs because the owner, Marta, told me she could use a pair of steady hands from 4 to 7 in the morning. I measured flour and learned the rhythm of dough under my palms. There's a moment when it goes from sticky to elastic, when it pushes back, alive. I like that part. I liked the routine, the fact that bread asks only that you show up and keep it warm and fold it over on itself until it yields. One morning, about 2 weeks into this new rhythm, I saw Ashley through the bakery window. She was across the street, talking to a man by the new car. She had sunglasses on, though it was cloudy, and her hair was freshly cut in a sharp line that made her jaw look severe. The man was laughing too loud. They looked like an advertisement for something I couldn't afford. I turned away before she could look in and see me with flour on my hands, an apron tied high. I didn't want her to put that image anywhere near whatever story she was telling now. A few hours later, I found a plain envelope slipped under my apartment door. Inside was a cashier's check for $10,000 and a note in a different hand than Ashley's. From someone who thinks some things are better set right than left alone. I knew the hand. George. I stared at the check until the numbers blurred. 10 is not 55. It's not the number my son said. It's not the amount that could move me closer to my sister, or let me breathe the way he wanted me to breathe. It was, however, an attempt by a man who had finally recognized one edge of the shape of his daughter. I put the check on the table and walked around it for an hour like it was something that might break or bite. Then I called George and thanked him. He sounded smaller. He said he had argued with Ashley, and she had said things he couldn't unhear. He said he couldn't control her. I told him I wasn't asking him to. I used half of the money to pay off the last bits of my credit card, and the other half to put first and last month's rent down on a tiny, clean place closer to my sister. 2 rooms, good light, quiet street with maple trees that will go bright in autumn. I moved in with the help of Marta and Jason, and a boy from the bakery who refused to let me carry anything heavy. I left the old apartment key on the counter and said goodbye to the cinnamon at 4 a.m. On my last visit to the cemetery before the move, I brought the blue notebook. I sat and read aloud to the grass, the way you do when the living need to hear you say you remember. I didn't tell Daniel about the check. I didn't tell him because it wasn't the point. The point was keeping him intact in my memory. His care, his humor, the way he always put the scissors back in the drawer where they belonged. People ask for justice stories. They want the daughter-in-law to stumble in a way everyone can see. They want neighbors to confront her in the street, friends to turn cold, that new car to break down in a puddle of oil. Maybe some of that will happen, maybe not. What I have is quieter, and in its way, harder to carry. The knowledge that I was thrown out like trash from a house I used to enter with my own key. That money my son set aside with my name in his head vanished into objects with a bow. That I will never get the conversation where he touches my hand and says, "Mom, here, breathe." What I also have is the blue notebook, the voice note, the small check that said, without words, "Yes, I see it too." A month after the move, Linda sent me one more photo, not of Ashley, of the maple tree on my old street, golden and huge, leaves piled up around the curb. She wrote, "Thinking of you." I put my phone down and cried for the first time in weeks. Big full-body sobs that left my ribs sore. I wasn't crying for the money. I was crying for a front door I will never open again, for a boy who tried to care for me past the horizon of his own life, for the simple fact that love cannot supervise what's left behind. I keep the hair envelope, the letter, and the notebook in the top drawer of my new dresser. Some nights I open the drawer and just look at them, not to punish myself, to remember that even when people who should love you recast you as debris, your shape remains. You are not the bag they hand you on a porch. You are the person who carried and folded and showed up and kept the list and the lamp and the plant by the window alive. There are days when anger asks me to get up and knock on that door again, to count plates and payments and put notes on windshields. On those days, I go to the bakery at 4 and weigh flour and whisper my son's name into the steam. It doesn't fix anything outside. It fixes something inside. The dough pushes back, then yields, then rises. I think of Daniel saying he wanted me to breathe. I count to 4 and do. Maybe one day Ashley will feel something that isn't victory. Maybe one day she will open a drawer and find a note in her own handwriting that says, "Be kind," and it will land. Maybe her father will tell her, years from now, that he gave me a piece of the money she grabbed and she will flush hot and look away and then, later, look back. Maybe none of that will happen. The story can end without the moral snapping into place like a seatbelt. My son died, and my daughter-in-law took $55,000 from him and then kicked me out like trash. Both things are true, and both things will remain true no matter what people tell themselves at their New Beginnings dinners. I can't make the world fair in this one corner. I can make my own small kitchen warm in the morning and knead dough until the muscles in my forearms burn and write my boy's name on the inside of a cookbook so I see it every time I bake. On good days, that feels like a life. On the other days, I sit very still and hold the blue notebook in my hands until the shaking stops.
Follow me for more stories.